So there you have it. War is the excuse. Now, I get that Ukraine is at war, and I deeply sympathize with the Ukrainian people dodging bombs because their government is corrupt and under the influence of money, that is. And that's same for the Russians. It's both sides are very extremely corrupt, and they're fighting, and these average citizens are trying to dodge everything that's going on there. It's tragic. But when you begin to strip people of their political power, their right to vote, and the right to voice their displeasure, you undermine democracy. So as many sit here and advocate for a war under the pretense of we're fighting for Ukrainian democracy, it's literally being stripped from the Ukrainian people as we speak, and not exactly by Russia. So if banning political activity from the opposition isn't bad enough, Zelenskyy also has stripped Ukraine of free speech. In an effort to combat misinformation, Zelenskyy has announced information-based content will be streamlined into United News. So basically, Ukraine has now become a one-narrative nation with essentially one political party, Real Democratic. The problem is, so many justify this activity because, once again, it's wartime and extreme measures are necessary. Ukraine is not alone in this. Russia is also banning anti-war information and jailing dissidents. But that's supposed to be expected. After all, we're siding with Ukraine because we're helping them preserve democracy from Russia, even though they're now acting just like Russia. But whatever, we're not supposed to try to understand it. Just like how we're not supposed to try and understand why several very ultra-nationalist neo-Nazi supporting Ukrainian political parties get to remain functioning while leftist parties are being banned. It doesn't matter. We're on the side of the good guys, they say. Now, I want to mention, I am not just picking on Ukraine on this one, guys. This is anti-war voices have been silenced and jailed since the beginning of time, I would imagine. Here in the United States, we have jailed anti-war voices since World War I. We even have jailed during the Vietnam. I mean, every single war, we have gone after people who are anti-war. There was the Boston Five during the Vietnam War, where they were trying to kind of talk to young men on how they could avoid military service, and they ended up serving prison time for that. The world, for whatever reason, is extremely against people who are against war. And if you're against war, you're a Putin puppet. We've heard this a lot from the people who are saying this war shouldn't be happening because Ukraine needs to maybe go to the table and actually negotiate with their cousins. And I meant that literally. People need to remember that this is more akin to a civil war than it is one country just wanting to take another country. These people are related. Again, Putin's own goddaughter is a Ukrainian. So this, but the war machine, and Ryan has talked about this numerous times, the war machine, the drums just keep beating on and on and on and on. And everybody just wants to march towards war. I mean, Face the Nation was crazy this past Sunday, where the host was grilling the U.S. ambassador, the China ambassador here in the United States. It was like, why aren't you doing more against Russia? What do you? So we're hearing this constant war drum beating, and if you're against war, you get jailed, you get silenced. You're anti. You're not a patriot. You're even potentially a traitor or treasonous,
including by Russia, right? Russia is jailing anti-war dissidents right now. Yeah.
Right. I mentioned that. So Russia's doing it, but that's expected. We say that's Russia. That's why we're fighting against Russia. That's why we can't let Russia win, because they're anti-democratic. Yet Ukraine literally did the very things that Russia does. And we don't have any right to sit here and say that we're any better, because we do it too here in the United States. Remember Dr. Lena Wen? She's even saying, well, maybe we should just kind of let up a bit now that we've got this new BA2 subvariant coming around. She tweeted out, look at this. For those who don't agree that the vaccinated can return to pre-pandemic normal, I ask, what should we all do? Perpetual masking, forever not dining out, avoiding large weddings and indoor gatherings? Virtually everything has risk, and zero COVID is not a viable strategy. My gosh, this woman, I swear, I
you agree
cannot
with all
even.
That, right?
No, I agree with that, but she was one of the worst.
Yes.
She was the one that was
her
like
character arc.
But better to flip flop and flip the right way. We should reward our enemy. Yes, all praise Dr. Wen. I reward the enemy when they start sounding like you. Shame people who move away from your position. It's why she's going really hard at that. I saw her responding to some person who was like, no, what about the immunocompromised? What about the elderly? N95s forever. And her just being like, no. which is great.
And Democrats I've seen Democrats attacking her on Twitter. They were blaming her for the COVID money not going through, saying, see, because you undermined the public's concern about the pandemic. As a result, now Democrats took this money out.
Do you think Dr. Wen was like murdered and replaced by a clone or something? Did she get Avril Lavigne or something? There's a conspiracy theory that Avril Lavigne was replaced.
Aliens have come down and they have invaded her body.
Okay, maybe that's what it is.
I don't know. Right.
It's an interesting question. I mean, she says that she was right then and is right now.
I think she saw some. One gets the feeling there are these behind closed door meetings between members of Team Blue, and they all got these, polling results at the same time where they go, wow, we're going to lose everywhere if we cling this fervently to masking toddlers and lockdowns, et cetera, and then they all changed course.
Right. And who has credibility among Team Blue? And she's highest among them.
Yes.
And so get her out there, get the Atlantic out there, get that kind of network get NPR out there.
Speaking
what I don't understand, though. Oh, go
ahead.
Well, what I don't understand is, so they're continuing to push this fourth dose. They want money for the fourth dose, but the reason why these companies even did mRNAs to begin with was because they said, oh, this is so, this is a groundbreaking technology that we'd be able to, as soon as we have a sequence, we could then sequence it for whatever virus almost overnight. Yet we don't have a shot for the actual variant that's spreading around. And we know that, especially now with this new variant, the vaccine that's currently out there doesn't stop the spread at all with that thing. So it really didn't even stop it with Omicron. So what is why are they not at least trying to get a new vaccine out quickly like they do with the flu every year? Seems like that would be the new norm going forward, is that they would manufacture a new vaccine for the new variant, and then people could go and decide if they want to go get that shot or not. Why are they not doing that? And then the government just clearly just has moved on from one crisis to the next. So they're kind of like, okay, we've moved on to a different one.
They keep saying that they keep saying they're going to do that, but then they don't. It's an interesting, weird situation. It's like, why do an alpha vaccine at this point when you're like 5 variations away from it?
Right.
Like, do the one that tweak it, and I guess they'd have. I don't know. They have to go through a whole approval process. There's some question whether or not they can rush that, because if it's just a tweak, the way they rush it for the flu vaccine, they don't require like a 3-year approval process for every flu vaccine. Like every season, they just tweak it. And apparently,
don't they tweak it between one? I don't know. I could be totally wrong. My understanding is that there's basically 2 that they alternate.
Oh, that they switch back and forth.
Yeah, that's my understanding of the flu vaccine. So I think they already have them, and they just go, this year they go with this one, and this year they go with this one to try to guess.
I don't know.
And I mean, you see how well it works, right? It works sort of. It doesn't.
They kind of blew it this year, I heard. Yeah.
Maybe they. Well, the flu itself, has been so far was actually crushed by our mitigation efforts, which were not at all. They did not work to contain the spread of COVID entirely. I mean, they did discuss how much of effect they had, but they were totally enough to just nuke the flu, which shows you how much more contagious COVID, even in the alpha strain, and especially now, is than flu. It's so much more contagious.
Although they're not 100% certain about that, and one other theory on that is that the flu was that the coronavirus outcompeted the flu. So a person is going to get in, like if your body is confronted with 2 different viruses, there's a stronger virus that's going to get you, so the other one just kind of can't really infect anyone. So it's just,
that COVID created some immunity for.
No, I think you're saying
immunity.
That COVID, like you're being attacked by 2 things at the same time, and COVID
knifes the other one.
Stronger. It's like which one got to the finish line first. It's like COVID got into your system before the flu could get into your system, and so it kind of outcompeted COVID. So that is one theory as well.
Or everyone who was capable of succumbing to the flu, they would have succumbed to COVID more rapidly, maybe.
So there's also that,
possible.
So, yeah.
The issue here is not just that, she's sympathetic to criminals. It's the people that stand accused of crimes that are usually poor Black and brown people and people that look like her. That's what the issue is, and it's a dog whistle.
And Rachel, what are you hearing from Republicans about how much of a fight they're going to put up here? Because you had Joe Manchin recently take down Sarah Bloom Raskin, the Federal Reserve nominee, but that was at the behest of basically fossil fuel companies. But when it comes to, as long as fossil fuel companies and the banks are not interested in an issue, Manchin is pretty reliably Democratic, and I don't see them as particularly invested in this fight, which means that they probably have the 50 votes. So how aggressively are Republicans planning to go after this?
I think Republicans, you heard them, almost to a person yesterday say, we want to have a respectful dialogue with the nominee, and then we're going to vote to, whether or not to confirm her. I don't think this is a situation where they are going to blockade the vote unless something drastically changes between now and when the vote is held. I don't think you're going to see, the tactics that they've used against other nominees, because, there's a difference between, right, someone serving on the Federal Reserve or someone serving at the Small Business Administration and a Supreme Court justice. But at the same time, you saw Republicans make pains to point out they aren't going to unleash the tactics that Democrats used against Justice Kavanaugh. They don't want to do that. And so I don't think you're going to see, the sort of nastiness that emerged from that debate. But, you will see senators question the nominee. I reject this assumption that, questioning in a certain way is a dog whistle for whatever. Like these are the advice and consent rule means you look into the nominee's record, temperament, and judicial philosophy, because the highest court in the country, that matters. And so I think that's what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, allow me to Rachel's point. I mean, these have gotten so heated, the Supreme Court nomination proceedings have gotten so heated in recent years. The treatment of Brett Kavanaugh, I think, is something like a lot of people cite on the right, and on the right, running from fervently pro-Trump all the way even to never Trump type people. We're all pretty united in thinking that was just beyond the pale. And so now when they hear that some of the aggressive questioning of Brown Jackson is getting criticized, and right, maybe it's a little too aggressive, but it seems, well, this is how it goes now.
Well, Brown Jackson isn't accused of sexual assault.
Right. Thank you.
Alimi, go ahead.
What's
your take?
I was going to say that. We can't just ignore the part where he was accused of sexual assault and pretty gruesome accusations. That is why he had a tougher confirmation hearing. And we cannot leave that important context out. It's not the same. We're comparing apples and vegetables, and we cannot do that.
And Rachel, actually, how would you compare the pre-accusation of sexual assault confirmation process of Brett Kavanaugh to what we've seen so far with Brown Jackson? Because they tried to go after a little bit of perjury, which I think was legit. He actually did commit perjury. But in general, he was cruising toward confirmation before that happened, right?
Yeah, it was a pretty standard confirmation hearing. If you remember, the completely unfounded allegations of sexual assault were unleashed the last day of the hearing. And then it just devolved into that. And I do think it's worth pointing out that, he was not at all credibly accused. And then he was on top of that accused of gang rape. He was forced to defend his virginity. He was dismissed for liking beer, for throwing ice. It wasn't just that they tried to derail his confirmation. They tried to ruin his life. And that is what I think a lot of Republicans are responding to say, look, yes, the confirmation process has devolved. I think we can probably all agree on that. The judicial confirmation process is, used to be, you didn't even have to invoke cloture on nominees, right? They were just confirmed without a filibuster. We don't exist in that environment anymore. And I think the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh was the absolute basement gutter of what that has turned into. And I hope we can avoid going back to that ever again.
Alimi, how much goes back to Mitch McConnell refusing to, meet with Barack Obama's nominee? Do you think that, or does it go all the way back to Bork, or do you think that there was some fundamental break when President Obama was told, no, you actually do not get to name a Supreme Court justice despite what the Constitution says?
Absolutely. I absolutely think that's relevant here. But what I think ultimately what happened in the specific cases of Kavanaugh is that he was accused of a sexual crime. And I want to say this, we've characterized his confirmation hearings as cruel and unfair, and they're unfounded. So it sounds to me like we're in agreement that people who stand accused of crimes should be received by people who are going to have compassion and be open to it. That's what it sounds like to me. So I'm very excited about Ketanji Brown Jackson rising to the Supreme Court.